So we're going to be moving on to the next section today. This next section will also be on the next test that we have. It doesn't look like we're going to have enough time to have the test this Friday. So we're going to push it to next week. But that's because of these 3-day weekends that we've been having have been throwing us off. Anyway, number one, the square root of x to the 9th power. We need to remember that the square root is really the power of 1/2. So we want this to be divisible by 2, right? If it were the square root of x to the 8th, the answer would be x to the 4th. But because it's x to the 9th, we have to do a little bit of work. So let's zoom in here and let's get that x to the 8th that we want times x to the 1. And what we're going to do is split the root to each of those. So we're going to have the square root of x to the 8th and the square root of x to the 1, which is just x. So our final answer would be x to the 4th and square root of x. And that's it. And we should all be pros at this already. If you're looking at this class open and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, that's not good. That's not good at all. All right? Let's move on to number 2. All of this stuff will come out on the test that we have next week. So right here, it looks like a complicated problem, but it's actually very easy. I could look at this problem and I already know that the answer is 3x to the 8th, y to the 6th. Really simple. Now here's the actual explanation. That complicated looking problem, it has a bunch of multiplication between it. It's 9 times x to the 16th times y to the 12th. And we are able to, because of the key concept that if you have a times b, you could split it to the square root of a times square root of b. Because of that, we could split the root to each and every one of these, right? So we don't need the key concept right there. Let me get rid of it. But let's actually split that root to each of them. The square root of 9, the square root of x to the 16th, and the square root of y to the 12th. So the square root of 9 is nice, beautiful number 3. And remember, the square root of a x to a certain power, it's like dividing that power by 2. So that would be x to the 8th. And finally, y to the what? When you divided this by 2? 6. So there's our final answer. 3x to the 8th, y to the 6th. Not all of them work out that great. Number 3 is an example of one that doesn't work out that great. Same thing, it's ugly. Let's split the root to each of these to make it a little nicer. So we're going to have the square root of 50. We're going to have the square root of x to the 6th. And we're going to have the square root of y. And last but not least, the square root of z to the 5th. So it's like having 4 problems instead of that one ugly problem. So let's go through each of these and let's simplify. The square root of 50. 50 is not a perfect square number, so I'm going to rewrite it with multiplication to get a perfect square number. 25 times 2, right? 5 times 10 is no good because 5 is not a perfect square, 10 is not a perfect square. But 25 times 2 is perfect because 25 is a perfect square number. And the square root of 25 is 5, and the square root of 2 is the square root of 2. So that's our answer so far. But let's continue to the next one. What's the answer to that? X to the 3rd. That's a nice, beautiful x to the 3rd. Easy peasy. How about this guy? You can't do it, so you're going to leave it. The square root of y. Some of you guys are saying just y, but it's the square root of y. Just leave it, okay? And the last one over here. Yes, let's rewrite it as z to the 4th times z to the 1. That way, when you split it, you could actually do the square root of z to the 4th, and we get what? Z to the 2nd, and we still have the square root of z. Now let's take a look at all of our answers because all of these answers are technically our answer. We just need to organize it, right? Every single one of these right here is our answer. We just need to organize it. I want to put this 5 out in the front. So our final answer is going to be a 5 out in the front. And then this x to the 3rd, I'm going to write it right there next to the 5. And then the z to the 2nd, I'm going to write it right there. And then I'm going to put all of my radicals together. My square root of 2 is right there. My square root of y is right there. My square root of z is right there. But notice I didn't put a square root on each of them. I put them together so it looks nicer. So this is our final nasty looking answer, but it's not that bad. The process is not that bad. You're doing 4 simple problems and then you're just organizing your answers. Okay? Like I said, we should be pros at this by now. If you're struggling, you got to go back and watch the videos so you can get better at it. Okay, guys, so we're going to continue with these notes on the next video. That way, there's not one video that's just too long.